noon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Around the Payload. I think this is episode like 17. I don't know. I lost track after two. But I am your host, the Blevins, and we've got a great show for you today. Of course, Around the Payload is a high noon production, and like many of our previous episodes, this one is geared up to be a spicy one. We've got a lot of returning guests, but we also have a brand new guest, and without further ado, I will start to introduce them right after I explain what Around the Payload is for you guys who are new. If you are at all familiar with Around the Horn from ESPN, it's basically the same exact show, and now ESPN is starting a show called High Noon, and I believe in my heart of hearts that it's as an attack against Around the Payload. So there will be many furiously written letters to ESPN, but I'm sure they're going to ignore them, just like I've ignored theirs and all of their cease and desist. But this, of course, is a game where we have four great panelists here talking about all stuff Overwatch and Overwatch League, and I'm going to be doling out points as the ever so fair and just judge that I am. You're going to be hearing a sound that sounds kind of like that sound right there. That is not you missing your quick play match, your placement match. It is in fact me giving out points, definitely not arbitrarily and based on a very stringent system that I have internally. But without further ado, let us introduce our guests, and we will start with the newcomer here. That of course is Nicole Carpenter, a writer and reporter for Esports. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
We have to my upper right, the Batman to my Commissioner Gordon. That is, of course, Volamil, an Overwatch writer for Esports 7, HTC Esports, and Winston's Lab. Welcome back, sir.
Hello, happy to be here.
We have, right below him, we have the always great Melorina, host of Owl Recap and the Cavalry. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And of course, the potentially almost as infamous as Big Kef himself, we have Effin Taco.
Hi, how is everyone doing? Please check out Owl Things Considered.
Whoa! You don't get to plug your stuff yet.
I do get to plug it. Hey, I'm missing a crown.
Well, that is actually somewhat of a
Maybe
valid
it got
point.
taken away because you tried to plug yourself.
No, it wasn't there already. That got pointed out by Twitch chat, and then he didn't read the intro that he wrote down, so I read it.
Well,
it's cool.
That's true. Of course, Taco has a show on the High Noon Productions Network called Owl Things Considered, which I have to admit is the best name you could ever imagine. But man, we're already getting distracted here, and it's almost entirely my fault. So let's it's mostly just Taco's fault. And you got your crown, by the way, so I hope you're happy.
That distracted me.
Let's jump right in to round number one.
Round one. Capture the objective.
So, since the beginning of stage one, and even somewhat, maybe not as much in the preseason, but even starting in the preseason, we've seen one thing be constant throughout Overwatch League, and that is NYXL being dominant. They are far and away the first place team here. They've won the past two stage titles, and they've made it to the stage playoff finals in all three stages. So, Nicole, we'll start with you here. Is there going to be any competition for New York this stage?
I'm going to preface this with Blevins. Hear me out through this entire thing, all right? I'm going to answer with my head and my heart. From my heart, yes, it's Boston. Boston's beaten New York before, and they can do it again. And I think this kind of patch confusion with Brigitte and Hanzo can do weird things to the standings. But if I'm going from my head, the answer is no. No one can beat New York.
Okay, it's a good thing you prefaced me there, because I was going to disconnect the call when you said Boston, but you got there. You got there in the end, and at the end of the day, it's your head that probably matters the most in this situation. Although I pick from my heart, it's just that my heart and my head both say New York. Volamil, moving on to you. Is anyone going to be able to contest New York this stage?
It's rough to say. I'm going to have to probably agree with Nicole there and say probably not. They are probably one of the most best preparing teams in the league, with some of the best coaching staff, with some of the most flexible players in the league. If there's going to be anybody who truly takes the kind of triple crown of winning an entire stage and then the stage or the seasonal playoffs, I think it is going to be New York throughout probably even season 2. So no, I don't think that they have too much competition, but there again, it's going to be a new patch with very little time, so it could be anybody's game, but I do have to give an edge to New York.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. Yes, I am, in fact, wearing an NYXL hat, for those of you in podcast land that don't know. But, Mel, anyone being able to even contest New York this stage?
I mean, everybody's going into the same new meta, but I honestly think New York could probably run the same thing they've been running, because they haven't really changed it and still dominate everybody, which is really annoying. And if they prove that dive's still a thing, I'll be really angry with them, because I'd like to see a little bit more go there. But I hope the finals are a little bit more exciting with this new meta than they were this last stage, because that was kind of boring, although I did get off early. And I don't know if you guys have seen Sabiobi's live stream with his wife. Have you guys seen that? Because it was one of the most funny, hilarious things I've ever seen. But he is playing Zarya on his live stream, which I think, and his wife was playing Tracer, which was just hilarious. But she did get a 4-kill from his Zarya bubble, so
nice,
good job.
Jeez.
But I think they'll figure it out. They've got really good tanks. They've got really good team synergy. I think they'll still be at the top.
I mean, I think we can all agree that SPB is just a beautiful human being. But Taco, last words here. Anyone going to be able to contest New York this stage?
Sure. I'm going to say yes. People will be able to, there'll be competition with New York this stage, more so than we saw in the last 2 stages. Yes, we saw Boston be really good in stage 3, but I mean, if you look at the playoffs, clearly when New York was trying, nobody was on their level. I think in stage 4, with the huge meta shift, particularly seeing Tracer pushed out of it, we're going to see more competition. Are they still the best coach team in the league, the best organized team in the league? Yeah. Barring things we haven't seen yet, of course, they're still the top dog, but will there be more competition? Absolutely. We saw a very strong Houston Outlaws team in stage 1 when the meta was more favorable for them. This meta is more favorable for them. I think you can say that for a number of teams across the league. Sabiobi is going to be forced to adapt, right? He's been playing Tracer for basically his entire career in Overwatch, not just Overwatch League. Yes, he can play other heroes. Yes, he's very mechanically skilled. Will he be more challenged on not his best hero? Of course. Does that mean they won't still dominate stage 4 into the playoffs? No, not necessarily. I think when you take into account their talent, their dedication, their teamwork, their coaching, they're still the best team. But with regard to how much competition they have, yeah, I think they will have more competition. They will be less high, less far above everyone else.
Interesting. I mean, yeah, definitely interesting to consider, especially if Tracer might not be the gold standard this meta. It might lead to something else. But let's move on and talk about the kind of the elephant in the room for stage 4. That is the first time inclusion of Brigitte into the Overwatch League patch. I've heard the full Monty of holy crap, she changes everything to dive is still just as good. So, Valmel, we'll start with you. How big of an impact do you think Brigitte is going to have on this stage in Overwatch League?
So first we have to kind of unpack this by saying that teams have been half-handedly told that they should be preparing for patch 1.22. But get within that same statement, you do have to kind of question, can this change? Should we be preparing for 1.23? So there is a question of how much time have these teams had to prepare for this incoming metagame. Even with that asterisk, you have to start to then question how much preparation time, how comfortable are these teams going to be on a more tank favored meta, because that's exactly what kind of Brigitte enables. Not to mention, but the map pool also, I'd say 65% of it kind of lends itself towards something a little bit more slower, something a little bit more kind of Reinhardt-y, something Zarya-like. But given that in mind, she's going to kind of have a slow burn in more of a gradual sense, where I think in the early stages for stage 4, you're going to see more dive. You're going to see teams starting to adapt. You're going to have your early adopters maybe do really well, something like a San Francisco Shock did, with Sombra. But I think towards the end of stage 4, she's going to have her place. She's going to know, teams are going to know exactly what they want to do with her. And it's going to be that ramp into Brigitte, not necessarily from the start and down.
Gotcha. Makes a lot of sense there. Mel, what do you think? Is Brigitte going to be the end all be all, or is she nothing, or is she something in the middle?
I think she is going to be good from the beginning. I think I disagree a little bit there, because she's so strong, and everybody I talked to, all the players that I talked to when I was at the stage 3 finals said, of course, we've been practicing her and she's absolutely going to be in the meta. And I don't think they have all the kinks worked out yet. And again, not knowing if Hanzo was going to be there or not was definitely kind of the icing on the cake. Like, do we run this or this? And I think we might see somewhat of a combination with Brigitte. I think we will see Brigitte in the meta most of the time. I don't think she's going to be kind of here and there. And I think the teams that were struggling a little bit more last stage, I think are really going to adopt that very quickly. I think you're going to see a little bit of pushback from the more fast-paced teams like Boston and Fusion and things like that, where it's going to be a little bit harder for them to adapt to that. It's going to be a much bigger change. But I do think that we will see her. The armor that she gives is just, if you're going against it, you can't beat it. So I don't think we're going to see them not play her. It just might be kind of that combination.
I can attest that if even a scrub like me can stay alive and keep a team alive, there's something to be said about the power level of that hero. But Taka, what do you think about Brigitte in this new meta?
I think she's going to make a huge impact. So until today, we weren't sure if they were going to be playing on 1.22 or 1.23. But Nate Nanzer, the commissioner of the league, confirmed that they were going to be playing on 1.22 due to a bug fix that they were not able to actually get implemented in time to consider playing 1.23. That means that we will get pre-nerf Brigitte with her extra super armor boost, and we will get pre-buff Hanzo. I think that means that we're going to be seeing a lot less dive on a significant percentage of our maps. So a lot of teams are going to have to learn to adapt very, very quickly. I think in certain situations we may not see her, but I think by and large the meta is going to shift very, very dramatically to focus on Brigitte and Reinhardt. I think there are a lot of teams that we haven't seen a lot of non-Winston play from, which I think will be very, very interesting. I think we've just assumed a lot of people can play Winston really, really well because they're top, main tank players in the league. But we really haven't seen a lot of these main tank players play anything other than Winston and Orisa at times, some other stuff. But I think a significant impact for this weird middle patch that we all played for 2 days is going to have a pretty big impact on the Stage 4 Overwatch League meta. Yeah,
for sure. Definitely agree with you there. Nicole, last words here. What do you think about Brigitte for this final stage of Season 1 of Overwatch League?
I think her stun ability and her shields are just so powerful that we're definitely going to see her used. But I don't think she's going to dominate the meta. I do think it will be more of a slow burn, like Valamel said. Teams that struggled with dive, I think, will push harder with Brigitte, but really dive-heavy teams and fast-paced teams are gonna. I think they're gonna push back a little bit because I do think that a really strong dive team could still be a middling Brigitte kind of slower play. They're gonna. I think the patch confusion really lends itself to that kind of balance between a really good dive team and we've maybe not super prepared on this patch 1.22 Brigitte composition.
Makes a lot of sense. And I could definitely see if you're a team that has a world-class Tracer player, you're not necessarily going to want to stop playing them, stop playing Tracer just because schmuck with a beard on a podcast told you that Brigitte was the best thing ever. But piggybacking off of that, I think it's safe to say that Brigitte is going to have some impact on the meta, whether it's all encompassing or if it's a slow burn or if it's just a small influence. I think we can say it's not going to be zero. And when we think about Brigitte, why she was designed, her kit and everything about her, what she was designed for is to counter dive. So Mel, I'll just put the question simply: is dive going to be dead in this stage?
I mean, originally I would have said yes, or I guess I hope so, but I'm not sure I'm so bought in now. I think that I was watching a stream clip from Muma, and he was talking about the dive and it not being dead, and that in their scrims with other teams that they are seeing some teams playing dive, some teams still moving to the Rhine Zarya type of meta. And even on maps like Gibraltar, where you'd think dive would be more of a desirable option, he says there's still some teams that are running that Rhine Zarya. So my hopes are, and I don't know if this is possible or if this is something that could happen, but I would like to see a more versatile meta in OWL and see kind of those comp switches and not the same 6 heroes or the same 6 with one swapped out every map. And I think that this might be leading us to that stage where you're picking more counter picks than you are picking one straight meta. And I think that would be exciting. I think that would be great. They have a Pharah, you swap off your Hanzo, you go to Widow. Or, they are doing this, you're going to swap onto a Diva so you can dive up on the high ground because the Junkrat's just raining bombs on you. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I don't think dive's dead, but I think we're going to see more variation than we have in the past.
Makes sense. Taco, your thoughts can we put the death knell on to dive meta?
No, I don't think so. I think we're going to see a dramatically less dive and a lot more variety, a lot like Mel said. I think that it's very difficult to put a fork in something on a meta we're actually really not that familiar with. If you think about it, like the player base only got that for a couple days. The pros have only had it for a couple days. By and large, Overwatch League teams just started practicing again on Sunday. So most of them got a reasonable amount of time off as they've adapted to the length of the season. They've been getting a little bit more and more time off. They played on ladder, but they really haven't experienced a ton of this patch either. So I think a lot of teams are, if they can't find Brigitte-oriented comps that they're super comfortable with, are going to rely on dive until somebody can push it, out with a comp, and they're going to be forced to adapt. So no, I don't think it's dead yet, but I think Brigitte has a huge impact on that, and I think we're going to see maybe the healthiest and meta and the most meta with the most variety that we've seen in the Overwatch League yet.
Well, I even if that's the case, I can't wait for Reddit to complain about how toxic and awful the meta is, just like they do for every single meta since before the game was released.
After
to be
like
fair,
2 days.
they are all toxic. But
Yes,
that's the people, not the meta.
Exactly. Nicole, what are your thoughts here? Is dive going to be around? Is it dead? Is it living? What are your thoughts?
I don't think we're ever really going to be able to call dive dead. I think dive really, it has a standard composition, but it is more of a style of play. And Brigitte doesn't do a ton for dive, but I think that the place to see innovation with regards to dive is the Overwatch League. This stage, it's not going to look, it might not look the same as it did in past stages, but I think there's going to be evolution of dive. And I, like everyone else has said, I am hopeful that this stage is going to be the most diverse and healthy meta that we've seen so far.
For some reason, the phrase "evolution of dive" sounds like Dead Mouse album or something, like an EDM album. I think I'm gonna. You heard it here first, folks. I'm putting it out. Dead Mouse, if you're listening, you can use it. That's a freebie. Valmo, last words here. What are your thoughts on dive in stage 4?
I pretty much agree with everybody. I don't think dive's going to be dead. I think it's structurally sound as a concept that Overwatch will probably always have. The heroes can swap in and out, but I think the again, the overall concept will still stay intact. And again, if we look at the map pool of stage 4, you still see a lot of, dive centric, maps that aren't necessarily more favored to tanks. Like, you don't really want to run, 5 or 6 tanky heroes out on Gibraltar A. You just get swarmed, and you can really suffer a very rogue-esque kind of aggressive defensive push. You don't really want that, especially when time is of the essence. Now, when we look at how healthy the meta is, and we take a look at some of the most recent results, contenders NA and EU just wrapped up, and we saw very, very different styles. We've seen EU adopt this very, very tanky meta, and NA has stuck with the tried and true dive. And I think that's always been the case within Overwatch. I think that a lot of the Overwatch League pros kind of are still at that very competitive mindset where they don't feel like they have the room to try and experiment with new things, because they're trying to get to where the Overwatch League is. So I think that was a big eye opener for a lot of teams, that you can run some wonky things and it can work. So yeah, I agree with everybody. I think this is going to be the evolution of the game and the meta, and I think we're going to see some cool stuff.
I just got to say, I think Evolution of Dive is probably going to be the title of the episode. So we'll give Nicole an extra point there for that. But that's going to bring us to the end of round number 1. Let's do a quick recap of the scores for all of the audio listeners in future, past, present podcast land. I don't know. I still don't understand how podcast time works. But in 4th place, we've got Taco with 15 points. We've got Mel in 3rd place with 16 points. And we've got a 2-way tie up at the top between Volmil and Nicole with 17 points. But there's still a lot of time to play, and it is still anyone's game. I can't even say it anymore without laughing. But let's move on into round number 2.
Round 2. Capture the objective.
So we talked a few weeks ago about the whole leaving of Kai, leaving as well as Rascal, leaving Dallas Fuel after the. I think dumpster fire is probably an accurate term to describe what the Dallas Fuel had been doing up until that point. Kai and Rascal being leaving the Dallas Fuel. And now we've just got news that Kai is joining the Outlaws as an assistant coach. So Taco, I want to start with you here. What effect is Kai going to have on the Outlaws? Is it going to be good, bad, other? What are your thoughts here?
I think if we're being honest with ourselves, we should be very cautiously optimistic about what we think might happen here. So Dallas was obviously a bit of a tire fire. There are a lot of things that went into that. Players, coaches, management. Kai has made a lot of comments lately, very recently on some shows on YouTube. I think whenever I see somebody come out of a bad situation, I don't ever think it's one person who's to blame. So yes, most people, public opinion is that Hastro's mostly to blame. But I think it's difficult to really just say, oh, everything that went wrong is Hastro's fault. And when I see Kai coming out and talking about all the things that went wrong, I don't see him, and maybe I've missed this, but I don't see him accepting any responsibility for himself. And I think that he's still a good coach, and I think that he will do good things for the Outlaws. But I think without being able to accept responsibility, at least some amount of responsibility for a situation you were in that went wrong, you're hindering your own growth as a person and as a professional. So I think that taking any stance other than a wait and see with Kai and what he can do with the Outlaws is a bit dangerous. And in addition to his own background kind of with Dallas, he's a new coach coming into a team that has 5 more weeks of regular season play. Yes, he knows them from the World Cup, but a lot has changed in the 3 stages we've seen of the Overwatch League so far. So I think cautious optimism, and I think we should expect if he stays with them for season 2 that we'll see a little bit more of the footprint of Kai on them, but I wouldn't get too crazy for stage 4.
Gotcha. So guidance counselor Taco says look inward rather than outward at the problems around you. Nicole, what are your thoughts on Kai joining the Outlaws and the effect that he's going to have?
Honestly, I think that Taco, that was a really good point about him not really taking responsibility for the things that did go wrong in Dallas. But with that said, I have seen that Houston and their coach Tyrone have kind of spoken publicly about the respect they have for Kyle, and and the work that he did with Dallas, or previously before when they were Envy, and that's something that's showing me that he's got maybe the way that his coaching style works. They already feel a little bit more comfortable giving Kyle the, what's the word?
The reins, or
give him the reins and give him the kind of control that he maybe wanted on Dallas that he didn't get. They entrusted him that with the World Cup. But that said, he's the assistant coach and Tyrone is still the head coach. So are we going to see anything crazy with the Outlaws happen over stage 4? No, I don't think that's enough time for his position to really make a difference for the team.
Yeah, makes sense. Definitely agree with you there. Valma, what are your thoughts here on Kai, the Outlaws, and the footprint he may or may not have on them for stage 4?
For the most part, I think both Taco and Nicole have been pretty spot on. He doesn't have a ton of time to be able to really influence the team, and not only that, he is kind of the assistant coach, which, no shade to Kyle, but I think this role probably fits him a little bit more. I think he does have a great, mind for the game, and has been around long enough to be able to coach people specifically on roles and mechanics and whatnot. But from an overall structural standpoint, it's really tough to say. Dallas was a bit of a mess, and it's tough to point fingers exactly who, what, when, where, why. But I think it's overall a good thing, especially if they do plan on investing in him in the long run and keeping him on board and allowing him to have his input. Having a few brains, not too many, but having a few brains on a team is always better than just having one. And he's publicly said that it feels better. It's a better fit for him as a support staff member. So I think it's overall a pretty good thing, and I'm interested to see how Houston looks for stage 4.
More brains, more gains. Got it. Mel, last words here. Yeah, think about it. Think about it.
Oh, how do I
last
top
words
that,
here
Blevins?
on Kai.
I think there's maybe not going to be some crazy changes with Kai coming for stage 4, but I do think there might be some inaccurate correlations made, because stage 4 I think will be better for Houston Outlaws just because of the meta. So Kai moving there for stage 4 I think is going to get a lot of praise if Houston lives up to what we think they are and does well in stage 4. So I think there's those implications that we have to look at. I also think that if he had come in stage 3 when the meta had not changed at all, I think it would have been a lot harder for him to make an initial impact. But because the meta just changed and he's just introduced into this team, he might have a bigger say in kind of what to do and how to form these different compositions. And, I'm sure everybody's all ears right now because everybody's trying to figure it out as well. So I think him being there right now is actually a very good thing. I think he's going to build some more rapport. And to be honest, until Flower gets back into the league in season 2, we've got a chance, right? Because the World Cup was the Flower show.
That is true. And even though I will we don't know where he's going, but if he's going to NYXL, I'm obviously going to be rooting for him. But I won't be rooting for him in the World Cup.
I don't even know if I'll be rooting for him if he comes to Houston. I'm still mad at him.
The second he puts on those NYXL stripes, he's a New Yorker to me. But let's move on and talk about surprises of a stage. So stage 1, there wasn't really too many surprises. Basically everything was a surprise for stage 1, right? I guess kind of New York being as dominant as they are. Stage 2 kind of was the breakout stage for Philly, maybe an argument for Gladiators being a surprise. And then obviously stage 3 was all about Boston, kind of coming out of nowhere after a loss of one of their star players at the beginning. So Nicole, we'll start with you. What team do you think is going to surprise us this stage in stage number 4?
Okay, I think Shanghai is going to surprise the haters by winning more than one match. I think they could even win 2. They're going to beat Dallas Fuel and Florida Mayhem. They've been steadily on the rise, and I believe. they're gonna win too.
That is a heavy claim. I was calling that a heavy claim back in stage one, but that's definitely a heavy claim now. And for what it's worth, I don't think that there are haters really. I think everyone is on board with Shanghai. No one actually hates
it's not
Shanghai.
against their team.
Right. Sure.
I mean,
yeah. I think Dallas Fuel is going to have a tough stage. So if it's Shanghai's going to win, if they're going to win too, at least one of them is going to be Dallas.
Volamil, your thoughts here? Who's going to surprise us this stage?
No, I kind of hoped that I was going to be towards the latter end of this question chain to bring out my card of who more surprising to have a successful or mildly successful stage relative to what they've done, rather than the Dallas Fuel. And the reason why I think this is if we look at when and where they've been successful, right? So we look at Apex Season 1. It was off the back of kind of D.Va and Reinhardt, so Coco and Nikki. And if we look at, how the projected metagame is looking for Brigitte, that's something that does play into their wheelhouse. Allowing them to play a little bit slower, allowing Siegel to flex off onto some of his more niche hero picks. I still think that Hanzo in his pre-rework state is still pretty good, especially in like a solo DPS composition. There again, you could still see something that Dallas has been cooking up for a while now. You could still see the kind of old Beyblade-centric May Reaper composition being pulled out. You could see Junkrat being tossed in as a solo DPS. I think it plays into their wheelhouse really well, and they don't have a ton of pressure on them. Nobody's really looking at them to perform, so I think that they come in with the underdog mentality. Patch should be able to fit them pretty well, and I think they should surprise people.
I agree with most of it, except for you're 100% right that no one is looking at them to perform, including themselves, which may be the biggest problem for them. But Mel, who are you thinking here? Who's going to surprise us this stage?
Oh, man. I think it's so up in the air. I mean, we have no idea what they're going to do, right? This is such a hard question. But I do feel like Ryan's going to be in the meta a lot more, right? So I feel like you can't do anything but go with Fraggy in the fusion, right? Like, come on. I mean, he's going to start fragging out and just killing everybody with his big hammer, and then he's going to have Brigitte next to him. Like, he'll be unstoppable. So that's my pick. I think fusion, they've got a lot of players that are really great, but putting Fraggy on Ryan is going to be much more in line with what he's known to be really good at. I think you've got Carpe, who's going to destroy. I think maybe we'll see Boombox be a little bit more effective, pull out his inner Jonak. He was the Jonak before Jonak existed, and get a little bit more. I meant that in the nicest way possible. Blevins, don't worry, I wasn't putting Jonak down. But I think with the armor from Brigitte, I think we're going to see a little bit more there. So who knows? I mean, I think they've got a good chance this stage.
Yeah, and not to mention that they're unlocking one of their widely accredited...
Don't you say it.
Okay.
Don't you take my points.
Okay, fine. I won't. We'll move over to Taco, who's definitely going to talk about a different team for sure.
Oh, maybe not. I have been...
No, you can talk about whoever you want.
I was waiting the whole time to talk about the Fusion. I'm glad Mel talked about them too. I'm going to go in a different direction, though, which is they are going to be fighting NYXL neck and neck for the best team in stage 4, and not a lot of other teams are going to be close. I think that people forget how versatile and talented this team is. I think that people are way, like by a country mile, underestimating the impact that Sato is going to have coming into the league for this team. I think that a lot of people think of Fraggy as their tank because he's an aggressive Reinhardt. He's known as a Reinhardt player from before Overwatch League happened. We've seen him be a pretty good Winston. We've also seen him be a pretty good Reinhardt. I think Sato is a much more measured, much more tactical player, and that if we see a heavy Brigitte meta, which I believe that we will, that even in compositions where you want to play a Reinhardt, you're going to see a lot more Sato. The way that Reinhardt and Brigitte comps interact with one another, Reinhardts have to be very, very patient waiting for their shatters, very, very patient trying to keep their shields up. The aggressive Reinhardt, if you charge right in, you're just going to get stunned by the Brigitte cleaned up, and then your team is dead behind you. I think that Sato is going to be a huge impact on the Philadelphia Fusion. If you look at how much of a difference bringing a player like Fisher in made for the LA Gladiators, you're talking about bringing a top main tank player in. And yes, we haven't seen him in a while, but his history shows that he should be a huge, major impact player for them at a position that has, yes, everyone loves Fraggy. I love Fraggy. He's a good player, but you're replacing a good player with a great player, and you're replacing a good player with a player whose tactics fit much better with a death ball CC stun meta than a dive meta. And I think that is going to make a huge difference for Philly. I think, unfortunately, you'll see a lot less of Snillo and the Snillo pillow. I think you'll be seeing, because of his Tracer one-tricking, right? I think you'll see a very heavy dose of Carpe and EQO. But I think you'll see a very steady roster from Philadelphia with Sato leading the way. I think they're going to be surprisingly dominant. And while we may see a couple games of bad Philly early on, they are going to be scary come the end of season 4. They are absolutely going to make the playoffs. And if things, we're going to have to see how things shift. But if anybody's going to challenge NYXL for the stage 4 title, it's going to be Philadelphia.
Interesting. Definitely a lot of good points there. I'm interested to see Sato as well, though I will say that using the argument of Sato's history in his favor, probably a bold and risky move at best, I would have to say. But we will we will move on into the last question here for round number 2. And I guess we'll continue to talk about the Philadelphia organization here. So if you're unfamiliar, Fusion University in the Contenders land, we're not allowed to wear their own jerseys on stage. And if you're wondering why, it's because Fusion University's logo is literally just a gigantic FU on the jersey. So Valmel, question starts with you. Should Blizzard not allow this? Is Blizzard in the right here, or is Blizzard in the wrong? What are your thoughts on this whole situation and the jerseys?
While yes, their logo is a giant FU, I think we're all mostly adults that partake in Overwatch esports, and we can read the subtitles and understand that it means Fusion University. Whether or not we hold a lot of salt on the kind of public forum that's been had on exactly why this happened, it seems a bit silly to me. I don't think it's particularly that offensive, and if it was, I think that should have been taken care of behind the scenes beforehand, so you could get these guys in their jerseys, because it did seem a little silly to have British Hurricane walk out in their snazzy, beautiful, crispy blue jerseys, and then have Philly walk out in a black t-shirt. So I think that probably made the broadcast look overall kind of silly. Probably a little bit more silly than having some guys walk out with a big FU on their shirt that just stands for a university.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Mel, your thoughts on the FU jerseys?
I mean, I agree that it should have been done earlier. I think that waiting until then, but come on, guys, they had a lot on their plate. They weren't watching that until Overwatch League was on break, so that's when they figured it out. I do think that, Valmo, you're underestimating or overestimating the maturity of the Twitch chat and the viewers. I think nobody thought Fusion University when they saw that shirt. But I think, and I said this last night, I think that for the most part, we're sitting here trying to make Overwatch League a sport that is recognized and accepted in not a meme in North America, at least. It's very much starting out on the bottom. And if I'm sitting there trying to tell my mom that I want to play esports as a 14-year-old kid, and she turns on the esports to see what I'm talking about, and there's these kids walking out with FU jerseys on, she's going to be like, nope, done. She's not going to wait for the explanation. She's not going to wait to listen about this. So I think everybody's thinking of it like, yeah, we don't care, but we're adults and we're in control of our own destiny. What we have to think about is the children that are trying to get into this. And to make this a legitimate sport, we have to make this something that they can start practicing from an early age that isn't brought down by their parents saying, no, you need to be in real sports, or no, you need to focus on academics here. Like, that's the only way that this is going to become what we all want it to become. So don't think of ourselves, think of the little children who shouldn't see FU everywhere.
That was a surprisingly good point that I didn't think I was going to agree with, but I do, and I'm sad that I do. But it was a great point. And as much as I want to see FU jerseys, I can just buy my own and wear it. But Taco, what are your thoughts here on the FU jerseys?
Mel's point is a good one. I think there's some background information that not a lot of people are familiar with. It hasn't been, as to my knowledge, as publicly available, but the Philadelphia Fusion organization, from the moment they signed and the Overwatch League, have had a lot of friction between those two organizations. If you've paid attention to anything the Philadelphia Fusion have done publicly or not publicly, they enjoy having fun. They have a lot of different, like, look, Chef Heidi, Sideshow, and their Treehouse, the Snow Pillow. They're all over the place. They love to have a lot of fun. Their marketing department is world class for any sports organization, not just esports. They came in, they were the last team to come in. They expected a lot more support from Blizzard. There was a lot of friction early. Obviously, like, their player getting suspended for boosting for 30 games, the other players getting suspended for boosted for 2 games. Yes, there's differences in however Blizzard evaluated the boosting. There's a lot of friction there that goes way before the academy teams. So when Blizzard decides, we're going to stop you from wearing these jerseys, like, they were aware, if any single person in Overwatch League was not aware of the point of naming their academy team Fusion University, the moment they submitted that to Overwatch League, they are crazy and probably shouldn't be with the organization anymore, or haven't been paying attention. So you're looking at them saying, like, yeah, you can name your team FU, but if you put it on your shirt, let me wag the finger. So I would say all of Mel's points are correct from a external, like, we're the Overwatch League, we're Overwatch esports, we want to project ourselves externally. But I think people aren't paying enough attention to, like, the fact that Blizzard was very well aware that this organization is, like, it is trying to be very entertaining. There was no, like, obscuring what they were doing when they named their academy team that. They could have shut it down when they submitted their academy team name. So I side with the Fusion. I think it's ridiculous to not let them wear those jerseys when you decided to let them have that name.
A lot of good points there too. Nicole, last words here on the Fusion University and their controversial jerseys.
Well, do I think FU is that bad? No, it's not. It's hilarious, the whole situation. But going back to thinking this through Blizzard's eyes, it's not really surprising to me that they denied those jerseys. Like Mel said, Overwatch League is more than just for people involved in esports right now. Overwatch League is being branded to a worldwide diverse market, more than just people who know esports right now, more than people who know about memeing in esports or whatever. And it's not surprising at all that Blizzard wouldn't do it. I do think that the communication issues between the Blizzard and Fusion University are suspect. The approval or disapproval of the jersey, I think I saw this on Twitter about the jersey being banned because it just had FU, and then they added Fusion University to the bottom. And Blizzard didn't get back to them in time to say if it was approved or not approved. So it seems like it was a problem for both sides. This kind of communication thing shouldn't be happening at a broadcast at this level, but you know, even it's not Overwatch League, but I think that it's not surprising to me that Blizzard wants to keep this very mainstream professionalism going down to their minor league.
Yeah, definitely. Man, everyone had a lot of really good points there, and now I'm, like, not 100% sure how I feel. Other than I want an FU jersey. That's definitely how I feel. And what I will note that no one mentioned is that Blizzard did take a somewhat funny and interesting way on the website. They're no longer listed as FU, they're FUN.
FUN.
So
Yeah.
they're fun now. So that was a pretty elegant solution. I don't know if they meant it to be as clever as it actually is, but no matter. That is going to bring us to the end of round number 2. And let's do a quick recap of the scores. This is a close one. It's definitely anyone's game. In fourth, we've got Volmel with 34 points. We've got a two-way tie for second with Nicole and Taco at 35, and Mel leading the pack with 36 points. The Fraggy Hammer, that's just worth so many points, for sure.
And it's so exciting to say.
It really is. But let's move on to round number 3.
The payload is approaching its destination.
Round number 3, of course, for those of you who are new to the show, is the buy or sell round. So each host or each contestant is going to have to either buy, agree, or sell, disagree each statement that I put out. And we will start with you, Mel. Buy or sell, the grand finals for Overwatch League being held on the opposite coast as the playoffs in regular season. So the finals are going to be in Brooklyn, New York City on the East Coast, whereas the entire rest of the season was in LA in the same place on the West Coast. Buy or sell, the complete swap over.
Buy. And I'm going to be there. So I'm super excited. I think this is super awesome, and it's getting them ready to show that they're a little bit more diverse in where they're playing, a little bit more of that transition to not always playing in one spot, get them into the other coast, where, let's be honest, that's been the dominant team, so I'm sure there's a lot of people there that are going to come to the arena. And kind of like a test run, they're kind of going out there, seeing like, hey, what's this going to be like being out here? And I'm sure it's going to be amazing, and we'll get that ball rolling a little bit quicker. So definitely buy.
I mean, I agree with you. Taco, resident of New York City. Do you buy or sell the finals being in New York City?
Super buy. So, but other than the fact that I'm a New York native, if we're talking about real points and not Mimi head gestures, sorry, podcast world, they are doubling down on their legitimacy as not only the top leading esports, but trying to be a real legitimate activity that is taken mainstream by garnering themselves an arena that is many, many, many times the size of the Blizzard arena. For those of you who haven't been to the Blizzard arena, I can't remember the size off the top of my head, but there's the stage, and then there's like a 90-degree arc off the stage where people sit. The Barclays Center is a basketball and hockey arena where there are seats on every side of the whole place. The capacity is much, much larger. So not only are they doubling down on their ability to sell out a place that is way bigger for multiple days, but they're selling out on their operations management and their event planning to be able to ship this operation from Los Angeles to Brooklyn, set up something that will work in a completely different way than it works in Los Angeles, and that there's going to be a lot of that. All of that is going to work flawlessly because this is their first grand finals. The impact this makes is substantial for the league, their growth, and their exposure going forward. They are going all in on making a huge splash here. This is very expensive, not just from renting out or leasing out, whatever the contractual agreements are for the arena itself, but for all of the support staff, all of the stage building, all of the costs that go into building this, the marketing around selling tickets. This needs to make a huge splash, and Blizzard has not pulled any punches. They went all in. This is absolutely huge. I could not buy this anymore.
We've got, I think, our first ever super buy, unsurprisingly, from the New York native. But Nicole, buying or selling the Barclays Center for the Overwatch League Grand Finals?
Buy. First off, I only live a few hours away, and I don't have to take a 7-hour plane ride to get there. So big buy on that one. But otherwise, the Barclays Center is an arena that has a serious prestige, and that's huge for the Overwatch League and for the legitimacy of this growing esport. It's going to be amazing to see the Overwatch League Grand Finals and this maybe 360 stands filled with fans. And not to mention that New York Excelsior has one of the most enthusiastic and best fan bases in the Overwatch League. So you know they're coming out in full force for this. And it's going to be good.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to try to argue against it being good, but we still have one more to go though. Volleyball, buying or selling the New York Grand Finals.
As much as I try to be, the voice of dissent sometimes, I can't not buy the heck out of this. But not only as I think everybody makes a great point. This is a great legitimate factor when when traditional media looks at this and goes, wow, games are selling out the Barclays Center. What's next? The Madison Square Garden, which we've already seen many esport be held at. But I look at this kind of narratively, and I hope this kind of tends to be a trend and maybe can be written into Owl's legend. And it could be some sort of like a fun little event where the seasonal finals are kind of given the home field advantage to like the most favored team. If New York is not paraded into the arena on some sort of throne or motorcade, I will be a little bit disappointed. But yeah, I think this is incredibly hype for a lot of the New York natives. Again, like you guys mentioned, they've got some of the most feverish fans. I haven't seen fans like that since like Bar Crafts coming back from like 2011. And it's very heartwarming to see it. It's really, really cool. So yeah, I'm all on board with the super buys. This is really cool.
Well, you all passed because it was going to be an instantaneous loss if you sold. So you guys all made it through. But we will move on and talk about something a little more contested here. So obviously in stage 3, we saw Boston with the almost perfect stage, perfect regular stage, I guess we'll call it. There's a lot of question here. Is Boston still going to be good or not? So, Taco, we'll start with you. Buying or selling Boston being dominant again this stage?
I'm excited to get to start this one. I was the first person, myself and Trevor May were the first 2 people on this very show early in its days to buy into the Boston Uprising as a playoff team when everybody still thought they were garbage. So please take that into consideration when I sell this real hard. So the Boston Uprising are an excellent team, and I don't think they're going to be bad. But what I think makes them so good is their the way they set up their comms. Now, I've interviewed a lot of people around the league, and when I talked to them about Boston, particularly I was there the last week of stage 3 prior, and a lot of these interviews were prior to the playoffs. A lot of them were talking about Boston. They have very quiet comms. People only call things out at the exact right time, only the most important things. Everybody else is required to have this perfect game sense. Everything leads up to this being the perfect situation for dives, right? Everybody's doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. The right comm comes in at the exact right time. They dive very clean. So part of the reason that they were looked at as being not that good coming in was, potential mechanical skill of the players, potential strategic skill. And they came in with excellent coaching, particularly with a unique way to do comms. Now they're running into a couple of things. One, Krusty's gone. He's in San Francisco. So your coaching element is gone. And 2, the primary, even though they can carry on with what they've learned and what they've strategized around their comms, I think it will be substantially less valuable in a meta that is less friendly to dive compositions. So I think that Boston will still be strong, but I think we will see something that is not even close to dominant. I think they will be a middle of the pack team at stage 4.
Interesting. Nicole, we'll go to you. You've already said that Boston may be competing with New York this stage. So buying or selling them still being dominant in this stage?
Buy. I believe in Boston's system. I think they've done a really good job of taking a top-down sort of approach to this that's worked really well for a team like the Boston Celtics. They're able to adapt and show resilience with whatever is thrown at them. we saw that in the last stage and their fantastic run. And I don't see why that's going to change now, even if Krusty's not there. They've got the rest of their support staff still there. That system is still in place. And I think that the variation that might happen with this patch and with maybe dive changing isn't going to be that big of a deal for them because like we mentioned early in the show, dive's not dead, and I think Boston's the team that can kind of show their resilience in this weird meta.
Definitely hard to bet against a player like Striker, that's for sure.
Yes.
Volamel, buying or selling Boston and continued dominance this stage.
I thought I would be the only one, but gosh dang it. Nicole beat me to the punch. I am going to try to buy this. I'm going to buy this.
No crazy leasing or
no
pawning
leasing,
or anything. No soft buying.
This is a buy. And on my contractual purchasing obligation, I want to note, we have to look at, Boston's bench. Yes, they have a great top-down structure. Their comms, I think, more favor the slow composition that we could be seeing that is kind of projected with Brigitte. I think that tank compositions in general are a little bit more straightforward. They have a little bit more there's a little bit more nuance to it, but it's not so fast paced. And I think that does lend it lends itself to the kind of slower kind of communication and very punishing nature that tanks tend to lead when you whiff a shield bash with Brigitte. This team is going to be able to punish you. They're going to capitalize on those mistakes very, very well because of the structure that Huck's put in. Not to mention the fact that you've got a player like Kalios on the bench. You've got a player like Gamsu, who's a fabulous main tank. Striker has shown his flexibility on top of, Junkrat of all things, which is incredibly impressive. So when you put all those things together off of, a great stage 3, I can't imagine that they're not going to be pretty good. But yeah, I think it's going to lend itself to the bench. I think the bench is going to be a big factor on if they're good or not. And I think they can be pretty good.
Interesting take for sure. Mel, last words here on Boston, buying or selling them being dominant again this stage.
Yeah, I'm not going to sell them again after I sold them after He Should Not Be Named. So I'm going to go ahead and buy. I sold real hard back then and they came out real strong. So I think it just shows a lot of, they've got that teamwork and that, I know they lost their coach, but I always think there's a lot more to that than just, I think maybe we'll try this, so who knows what that was for. But I think we've seen from Boston them come into the league on the bottom, them rise up and, that wasn't meant to be a meme, but yeah, but them kind of take it and go. And if all else fails, they've got Deflategate or, Chairgate or something to lean back on. So
they've always got that. But we're going to actually move into the last question here because we're running a little bit short on time, and the fans always love the meme question. And I don't know if there's a more serious, but also more meme. It's both serious and meme. So we're just going to run with it. And it's counting as the meme question here. Last one here. Nicole, buy or sell Shanghai over Dallas this week?
Buy. This one's easy. Shanghai's not only going to win one game, they're going to win 2. I'm sticking with this.
Bold.
Hell, I might even go up to 3.
No. that is extremely bold. Although you will forever have this clip right here to point back to if it ever happens.
We'll forget about it if it doesn't happen.
Right. Oh,
but
exactly.
if it does,
this will be the most retweeted clip on Twitter for sure.
Yeah.
It'll be the most retweeted Around the Payload clip. Featuring you, I'm sure. Probably featuring anyone. Volamel, buying or selling Shanghai over Dallas here?
I still, to be honest with you, and I've done this is a toughie. But if I had to give an answer, and I said this last time, I think Shanghai can do it. I'm gonna buy.
That was you already have buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
Difficult for him.
So when we look at
Take it
this
back,
team,
take it
right?
back.
No, we're not taking it back.
No takesy
We're all
backsies
in.
on Around the
Exactly.
Payload.
When we look at this team, you know, they're on the uptick, right? So they do have a lot going for them. They are the ultimate underdog. They're potentially going 0-40. So I think they have a lot of intangibles playing towards their corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention, you know, we talk about this meta game, we talk about Reinhardt, you know, what pairs great with Reinhardt? It's a Zarya, and you just so happen to have a fantastic Zarya player in Cavalry on your team. Not to mention, oddly enough, when we look at their support line, and it's been a little bit rough for them, they've been kind of out left to dry, and playing this Death Volley kind of Protoss death destruction orb, you tend to be able to group very inherently, very just by happenstance, you just tend to want to clump up, right? So I think that again lends itself to kind of solving a little bit of their weakness. Not to mention Dallas is going through, you know, quite the roster shuffle. They just got a new coach, and you know, touching back on Shanghai support line, Miraculous Youngster was pretty slow. They were pretty tank heavy. They had their own style. I think they could adapt well within that with Sky into this team. It's going to be a 3-2 either way, but I think this is where Shanghai might be able to take it.
So we've got 2 buys so far for Shanghai. Mel, buying or selling Shanghai over Dallas here?
I absolutely buy. 1, just to troll Bob, but 2, because I think they can do it. And I think, like Volmil said, Gaguri, like, come on. If you've seen that girl on Zarya, like, she's a good diva. She's an amazing Zarya. So I think that's going to be huge for them. I think with Brigitte in the meta, I think you're going to see people living longer and fights lasting longer. So it's more about endurance than it is about insta kills, and it's more about sustaining. And I think that will help Shanghai and will definitely help their supports stay alive a little bit longer and provide a little bit more support for their team. I think that everybody's terrified of being the first person to lose to Shanghai. So they get a 1-map win, and everybody I've talked to at the Overwatch League has said, yeah, if they win a map, you know, we get really nervous and we have to calm ourselves down because nobody wants to be that team, right? I think Dallas thinks and knows they are that team, so maybe it won't affect them as much, but Dallas has more problems than anybody can ever talk about in a week, and they've got a lot to figure out, and I don't think are going to do it this season, and I definitely don't think they're going to do it week 1. I think they're either going to underestimate Shanghai and not prepare as much as they should, or they're just going to forget about it and say, let's prep for season 2, you know? So, yeah, I buy. Go
Got
Shanghai.
Taco, last but not least, buying or selling Shanghai over Dallas?
Look, if I was buying with if I was choosing my decision with my heart and I had to pull my wallet out, I'd buy this all day. However, I have to make this decision with my brain, and the truthful answer is that we have to sell this. This team is 0-30. They've beaten literally no one. No one. They have beaten not a single team, including every time they played Dallas, where everyone predicts them to finally get their first win. Yes, they have a lot of things going for them in their favor. They've got new players, though they all lost all of the games in Stage 3 with them as well. They have some cool stuff like Gaguri getting to play on Zarya. Yes, I can't believe no one mentioned this as the primary reason they may win, which is Effect is gone. Because I think he was the hard carry the last time they still got beat. But look, Dallas is a team who has won games. Which at the end of the day is maybe the most important thing.
Have they won a game without Effect?
That's actually
I don't know.
A pretty good question.
It's a good question, but I think if you look at the roster that they have, Seagull is an amazing projectile player. I think AKM it fills a niche spot in Overwatch League due to how narrow he is as a hit scan player, but I think his hero pool actually plays into this like weird, well, this or any weird unsettled meta better than a settled meta, because I think anytime where the meta is volatile, Soldier 76 becomes a better pick. Because he's just so middle of the road, and that's something that they can get away with putting him on. I think that people forget that they signed OGE, so they have a stable tank, and they have Mickey. Like, the team is bad, but they're not 0-30 bad, guys. Like, could Shanghai win? Yes. Is this their best chance to win? Yes. Would I bet on it? Absolutely not. They've literally not won yet.
Okay, can I say one more thing?
Yes.
Okay, so what you haven't talked about, though, is the fact that everybody's kind of starting on this more even playing field this stage. So Shanghai came in and was adjusting their roster every other week, right? So they had a new team. Okay, so did Dallas.
and every stage is a different meta. Every stage of the Overwatch League has been a different
Not as different as this stage will be, in my eyes. I think that this stage provides a more even playing ground for Shanghai to kind of get that boost that they needed to play at a more even level.
Well, all I will say is that 75% of the panel buying the most losingest team in professional sports history might be a little skewed, but it will be grand if and when it does happen, and you will certainly hear about it here on Around the Payload. But that is going to bring us to the end of the regular stages here. This is the saddest, it's actually the happiest part of the show, when I have to eliminate two of the contestants and bring us to the final two for the final question. Great. And in fourth place with 49 points, we've got Effin' Taco. Thank you for participating, sir. But even though you're the only person who picked not the losingest team in history to
somehow
win,
just not good enough.
Not good enough.
To support reason, logic, and numbers.
Well, if you're trying to use reason, logic, and numbers to impress me, you're on the wrong show. that should be sure. In third place with 50 points is sadly my Batman, Mr. Volamel. The crowns have fallen, and we leave only the two crownless here in the finals as we go to the final question here. And there's no points given. It's each person. I put out the question. Each person gets to give their answer, and then I alone decide the victor at the end. And we'll move on to that final question right here. And that is simply, who do you see as a breakout player of this stage? A random coin flip has decided that, Mel, you are the first to go here.
Okay. So I think the breakout player of this stage is, I never prepare for this question because I don't ever think I'm going to get this far. But I think the breakout player is definitely going to be Cavalry. And I think it's very appropriate. There's two women in the finals of this Around the Payload, and we're picking a woman here. So I think that she came into the league with unrealistic expectations from people that she would save the Shanghai Dragons. Like, come on, one person can't save the Shanghai Dragons. And I think she was also put on a player that she's really good at, but maybe not the best in Overwatch League at. I think Zarya, she is the best in Overwatch League. And if Zarya comes into the meta, I think she will be at that top tier, and she will be able to provide what she needs to her team. I think that she's going to show us more of who she is, and she's going to be able to lead more and feel more confident, which I think is always been Gaguri's issue, is that she lacks that confidence even on her best hero, Zarya. So if she can come in and kind of provide that, I think she will be the standout player.
Definitely a good choice here. Nicole, your choice for the breakout player of this fourth stage of Overwatch.
I'm guessing I can't also choose Cavalry.
Well, I will say that you can also choose Cavalry. However, in the past, it has never worked out copying the person who went before you. I can't.
I'm not going to choose Cavalry, but I just want everyone to know that I would have also chosen Cavalry. My second choice, I'm not going with my second choice either, but I heard that anytime I mention Jonak, that might give me some extra points. But who I'm actually going with is Sabiolbi, and it's because I am, there
You're
are
cheating.
yeah.
You
I have
never
like
know.
an actual reason for this too, but he may not be playing Tracer in this stage, and I think that gives us an exciting possibility to see Sabiolbi break out of kind of that Tracer. He's the best. He's so good at Tracer, but I think we can see more from him. It would be cool to see him on Zarya. Unsure if that would happen, but he's been playing it on stream, so I'm just looking forward to seeing something new from Sabiolbi, and I think that this is the time.
Yeah, those are both very good answers, I've got to say. So, well, first I'll preface with the correct answer was not the player Super himself, but the blood-soaked Reinhardt hammer of Super was the correct answer that would have gotten an automatic victory. But barring that, man, so on the one hand, obviously my heart always goes out to NYXL. SBB is a fantastic player, and I would love to pick him as a breakout player, and you had a really great reasoning for it too. But the Pander Bear is not going to win this time. I'm going with Gaguri here for the breakout player of the stage. I honestly do believe that she's going to have a great stage here. And even though I don't think I can pick the Dragons to win, I do think they are going to be doing better here. So, Mel, you are the victor.
You've captured the objective.
You have captured the objective around the payload. The floor is yours. Sell out, shout out, do whatever you'd like. You are the victor here.
Oh, yeah. You can find me on I'll Recap every Monday at 7 Central-ish. And I also do the Cavalry, and that's just podcast form, so you can find that. And that's about it. Thanks for having me, Blevins. It's been a great time. Thanks for all the co-hosts here. It was great fun. Sorry to destroy you all, but the women rose up and really figured it out, so can't wait to see you again. And
Taking
now I have
everyone
a crown that's not
did.
transparent and has a white background.
And that is definitely on purpose and not because of my lack of ability to do it. It is because of my lack of ability to do it. But you can't hear me when I do this. Oh, wait, why was I talking to that?
Sorry.
That is going to bring us to the end of the episode. We went a little bit over an hour, but that is fine. I'd like to say thanks to everyone thank you to everyone for coming on. All of the Twitter handles and all that stuff is going to be down in the description below for all of the hosts, so you don't need to worry about going out and finding them. They're going to be right down there. Make sure you find them. So that's going to be it, guys. For Nicole Carpenter, for Volmill, for Taco, for Melorina, I'm the Blevins, and we will see you guys next week around the payload. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you.